Okay, so I'm gonna get out some grains and we're gonna start prepping some grains today. Uh, I'm gonna use half wheat, half oats. I kind of go back and forth between grains. I was using just wheat for a while. I was using one part wheat to, no, 2 parts wheat to 1 part wild bird seed until my local birdseed distributor switched over to a birdseed that had mostly sunflower seed in it. I used to get it because it had a higher millet and sorghum percentage, and that was kind of nice because it was like the same price as wheat. And millet around here is pretty expensive, but yeah, I like the holes on the oats because they don't stick together as much after the PC cycle. But it's just really about whatever you like, whatever's affordable. But we're gonna go ahead and start hydrating some. I'll show you guys how I boil them. You can use really any size pot, any amount of grains. Um, I have a 180 quart pot, which is about 45 gallons, and then like a big old burner a double jet propane burner that sits underneath it. I think it's like 200,000 BTUs even, so I mean it does it quick. And we're gonna bring these to a boil and boil for about 20 minutes and kind of check the hydration point throughout. Strain them out until they're done steaming and load them up into bags, pre-seal them, and pressure cook them for about 5 hours, which I know some people think is long. I was doing like 10 to 12 5-pound bags in my 41 quart All-American, so it was just crammed, and I was trying to be safe on the core temp side of that. Could probably do 4 hours easy because now I only put 8 5-pound bags into a 41 quart All-American, so there's only 2 layers rather than 3. Yeah, so I mean, I might even do 4.5 hours today. I would say if you're doing 5-pound bags, do at least 4 hours. That's been my experience personally. So I'm gonna go grab a couple 50-pound bags of grain, throw them in here, and get it water. So I'm gonna go turn on the hose, get this filling up, and kind of show you guys where I put the water level. While we do that. So as you can see, I mean, this is a big pot, probably like 2.5 feet tall, about 2.5 feet wide. I'd say it's about just a little over a third full. I mean, stick a good amount of my hand in there, my whole hand. And this is see if we can find some wheat down here. Yeah, we got the wheat here on the left more so, and then the oats here on the right. And we're gonna go ahead and just let this sit for a minute. Okay, so this is all the way filled up, and it's kind of hard to see. There's probably close to twice as much water uh, as there is grains by volume. I feel like that's generally a safe amount. I am going to get another pot to prep 2 bags of grain in. I think that this is just a lot of water, a lot of pot. If this were to tip over, it's just less than ideal. But yeah, so don't want it too full or it'll start to boil over and spill grains everywhere, which you don't really want to catch on fire or anything like that. So twice as much water by volume at least generally. we're gonna go ahead and turn this on, let it start heating up. It takes a little bit. I use propane for my pressure cookers as well as my grains. Okay, we still got some gas left, and you can use electric. I think that gas is just faster. I like these little gas was left on. Turn that off real quick. I like these little rechargeable grill lighters. Come in handy. But yeah, you can use gas or electric, it really doesn't matter. Gas might be a little bit faster unless you have a really good burner. We'll go ahead and light this up now. It's 8:30 a.m. right now. We'll see where we end up. Put the lid on. We're burning. We'll probably come back in really like 30 to 40 minutes and it'll probably start to be boiling. While you're waiting for your grains to boil, you can make sure your pressure cookers are ready. I'm going to change out the water in this. It's a little oily from the Vaseline, so we'll switch that out on all 4 of them. And make sure those are set to jet. I need to run an extension cord from my sealer kind of out by the grain prep area and grab some bags. And that'll get us prepared in that regard. And I generally come in here and we'll try to stir this probably every 20 minutes-ish. Just don't want anything sitting on the bottom to get too cooked up relative to anything that's on top. That's kind of one of the downfalls of doing so much in one container. You might see some inconsistencies if you don't mix, but it's really not a big problem. Alright, so we're in here, and it's not a full boil, but it's been kind of simmering, I guess, for about 20 minutes. In my opinion, we really just got to keep an eye on it, and we'll take a closer look at some of these grains real quick. I'm going to kill the heat. Okay, so to give you guys an idea of underhydrated and overhydrated grains, kind of what we have here in the center is what I shoot for. And I'll kind of open these up here in just a second. And then we have like some undercooked and overcooked. Overcooked's kind of simple. You can kind of see they start to pop open a little bit. And that's what you don't want, because it'll start to get smushy really easily. And these are still usable. Anything much further than that, you do start to risk the smushy zone. Kind of pop in here. See, it's all completely brown. Very consistent. Still usable. Relatively soft though. Doesn't have much to a shape to it. The underhydrated, obviously, you can see it has a lighter color. Easy visual cue. And these are all cooked at the same time, actually, so it's a good example of why you want to use like a smaller pot usually, or just stir more frequently. I think I've stirred 3 times. It's actually been about an hour now. And I was gonna pull them, but I decided to let them sit for a little bit more. In this case, I actually turned the heat off with the lid on and just kind of left them alone for a minute. Looking at the undercooked ones, kind of see a lot whiter, nearly completely white. Doesn't break apart nearly at all. Holds shape pretty well. The main problem you're gonna have there is obviously it's just gonna be too dry. You don't want to do that. What I kind of shoot for isn't popped like these, not completely gray on the inside. So this is almost what I've heard some people say is like al dente. So you can pop it open, keeps its shape pretty well still without smushing around. Looking in there, just almost a tiny little bit of white. And that's kind of what I shoot for the consistency of all the grains in there. You can see I don't have any fancy knives or anything like that. These hold their shape really well. The moisture through the pressure cooking cycle will redistribute that moisture and kind of keep it all at a level consistency. You're shooting for about 62% hydration. I feel like once you get towards the higher end with the popped ones, that's a little bit over, and this seems to be a little more appropriate and safe, so you're not getting excessively wet grains. That can also be a personal preference. Again, didn't get a very consistent cook this time, and we're still going to cook them, so you can have a mixture of all this and still have it be usable. I poured a little bit out just to look at it, and I could have kept the heat on, but the heat is off, and they're kind of leveling out a bit. They're probably about ready to cook. I think it's probably about 9:45 or 10 right now, so that was actually like an hour and 15 minutes. And I poured some of these out just to look at them, and we'll pour these out in just a couple minutes. Here's a good boy. There are no mistakes, only happy accidents. And I suppose it's worth pointing out the oats hydration point seems more consistent in this run. Like I kind of mentioned, I occasionally mix different grains. I like to try some different stuff out. That one's pretty good. Got a little bit of white in there. these ones just, they seem more hydrated and also more consistent. That one's a little underdone. It's pretty good. Probably still a little underdone. That's okay. That's exactly why we killed the heat and let them sit longer. If you start to see underdone grains as well as overdone grains, it's probably just the best to kill the heat, let them kind of reabsorb, even out a little bit, and we'll kind of redistribute that moisture without overcooking. That's kind of what I did here. I might experience issues like this until I get another pot. I have another burner and another propane tank. I just need to get another pot. But it's been about 15 minutes and these guys are looking a bit better, a lot more consistent. Some of the drier ones are around, but it's pretty hard to tell. There's far fewer inconsistencies after letting them just kind of sit. I drained off a little bit of that excess water when I was checking them. I think they're just about ready to be bagged up. So getting a closer look on the final cook. Looks fine to me. I'd say for every undercooked grain, as long as you have an overcooked grain, you'll be okay, and vice versa. And you know, there's margin of error. Like, it doesn't have to be spot on. I think really anybody can cook their own grains. It's just there's a learning curve to it, and you know, cook them how you probably like to eat them. Not over, not under. Make sure you get them just generally dried off okay. I've been bagging them up a little more wet even lately. Like, I'd have no problem bagging this up right now. I am gonna let it just kind of chill for a minute though. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a couple undercooked grains. Man, I can't get a shot. And then there's definitely a couple overcooked grains, but you know, that's okay. That's okay. That's how a lot of my grains have been lately, and they tend to even out fairly well 99% of the time in the pressure cooker. So I'll come back out in probably like 15 minutes and get these bagged up. And we'll go from there. Okay, so we're gonna start bagging these up. We got the bags. We got a 1 gallon scooper, and we're gonna put 1 gallon of grains into each bag. You know, that's all gonna be up to you, what size bag you're using, what size pressure cooker you have, how much you want to put in each bag. I do 1 gallon per 5-pound bag, and I can fit 10 or 12 of those inside a 41 quart All-American. Lately I've only been having to fit 8, so we'll see if I can get 8 5-pound bags between the 4 41 quarts that I have. That's what I'm shooting for. And yeah. a little bit closer right here so you can see. I like to get up in these gussets, straighten out like that. Make sure we get some grains into the bottom gussets because it's better to have less air in those areas. Straighten back out again, give a little bit of a tamp, and then we'll fold up. Left gusset, I like to slide my fingers down each one of the gussets to make sure they're straight. Get the right one a little bit. Get a little bit of that air out. Get it a little bit flat. Flat and straight. Then we're gonna go push the crap out of it. Flatten it. Push. Flatten. It should almost start to form its own vacuum. Try to get as much air out of there as we can. And slide up really carefully while we were pushing it down. Keeping all the air out. Flattening down. Making sure it's straight and flat. Go ahead and close it up. And that's one. See if we can get another angle on this. Okay, now I'm gonna show how I kind of pack them on in there. And in my experience, you want to do this as quickly after sealing them as possible because air will come in through the filter. 8 fit in here so nice and easily. I take a little pizza pan, got off Amazon, throw that on top, and then I'll come in here with some Vaseline and just put some right around here. I do it about every other cycle actually, and I did it last time, but just a nice little layer of Vaseline. And yeah, put the lid on there and we'll get them fired up once they're all filled. Real quick, what I use is gold plates for my Presto because they are aluminum and don't rush. And these are brackets for fencing, and I found them to be cheap and reliable and not rusting. And then I put the water line just about there, which is probably about a 1/2 inch. And that seems to work great. Now, if you don't have a shut-off valve, that might be a little different. Your water level is going to be dependent on your sterilizer. Also, strainer. Pretty straightforward design, like many that are out there. I just stack them on top of each other and cross them as necessary. They're just sitting on a couple bricks. I was gonna make a frame for them and stand them up, but this works pretty easily. Been happy with it. Okay, we're all loaded up. And see, I have an extra one on here and 2 on here. Doesn't really matter. Gonna throw those on. Gonna squeeze the lids on there. Get these fired up, and then we'll start talking about purge. We're gonna want to see some steam first, but we're gonna get these going. We're gonna turn them on, and we'll be back at you. I turn these up high when we get started, and they kind of burn at different rates. Like this one has more of a jet stream, and this one has a little bit of a lighter flame. I think it's because I use a splitter. You're gonna want to account for that. These are hotter flames and stuff like that. And everything that can happen will happen sometimes. Like your propane will run out. So you got set back another 1/2 hour. Check your tanks before you start too. Don't get distracted by things like making a video, so you don't have to come out here and smell propane. And it didn't run completely out, it just got low, and then I think that the wind finished it off. So we're gonna turn these back on. I thought we were gonna start building pressure. Okay. The time right now is 12:30, running a little bit late today because of, well, mainly this video. I started late because I wanted some sunlight, and it takes time. I've been having storage troubles. There's always something with these phones. But anyway, we're going to tighten these up, and once steam starts coming out a little bit, we'll come back. Okay, so we're getting steam on one of them, and real quick, I just wanted to touch on, I did kind of go against what I regularly do earlier prepping. I poured them out a little too early, but you know, I think it has its purpose for this video because it doesn't botch, and my grains are commonly inconsistent in the slight regard that some will be over, some will be underhydrated, but like I said before, it does level out. But I did pour them too early. I just scooped them back up and put them back in the pot, and then let them sit for a little bit longer, and that was fine. Also, like I mentioned, if they do start to overcook, you can pretty much do the same thing.
I don't think that you really need perfection when you're making the grains, unless you severely overrun your kit. Also, the different types of grains that you can use, I don't think it really matters which specific one that you do use. If you are using mixtures, though, I'm already starting to realize that the oats hydrate a little bit quicker than the wheat. So in that case, you can always add one first. When I was doing wild birdseed and wheat, I was seeing that the sorghum in the birdseed was cooking quicker than everything else. Everything else didn't really seem to matter much, but the sorghum. So I was adding that in just a little bit later as well. These guys are getting pretty close. The other ones are a little bit further behind, but once they start going like this, I'm going to let them sit for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to let the pressure raise up to 15 psi, and then I'm going to purge it. So I'm going to go ahead and let these continue. I'm going to actually turn this one down a little bit so the other ones can catch up to it. And maybe even turn the other ones up a little bit. We'll come back in 15 minutes, shut the shut-off valves, and let those pressurize. What's really going on here, there's a couple different ways you can purge. One being just like a Presto, you just let it steam for 20-ish minutes and gets all the air out of there, because you want pressurized steam in there. You don't want pressurized air. That's not going to actually sterilize your mediums. Or how most people purge, all Americans. I can't remember if they recommend to see the steam coming out at a certain rate before you shut it, but you can pretty much shut it and then let the pressure build up to 15 or 20 and then purge it, and then you're good to go. How I do it, I just let it steam for about 15 minutes, close it, let it build to 15, release it, close it again, let it build for 15, and start the cycle. So we'll come back in about 10, 15 and close these off. Usually once it starts getting this aggressive compared to like that, is about when it's ready to go. But they're about ready. At least these three. I'm gonna go ahead and let these guys get going. We're still gonna purge them. I'll probably just close this guy down too. Okay, we're in here. It's finally up to pressure. We're gonna go ahead and purge it. I just take this big old stick and wave it. You see, if it starts shooting out a shit ton of water like that, I'll usually just call it good and keep it going. I might come back after doing the same thing to all of them and let it go back again until it starts shitting water. But that's about that. We'll let them go back around and do the same thing, and then start our cycle. every once in a while have this happen. You see something's clogging it. Probably a bag, or I'm not sure. Maybe even the metal plate, which is funny because that's why I put the plate in there. But at this point, it's usually fine. It only happens like at this stage. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what causes that, but I haven't had a problem with it. Alright, well these are just going to get to 15 psi, and we're going to do at least a 4-hour cycle, but in between a 4 and a 5-hour cycle. Probably closer to 4 this time, maybe closer to 5. Just depends on how I feel. Alright, and that's about it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Usually when it gets to about here, we'll take it back from full heat, but then set it to a position, and you never want the flame to creep up on the sides, or that's going to melt your bags. But put it in a medium high position so that that's probably about there, and it'll still continue to build heat, but you don't want it to shoot too far past. And then you're going to start babysitting it for the next however long to make sure it doesn't get too high or too low. And you'll slowly get the hang of where you should set your burners, because it is going to make a difference. And you want it to just float between 15 to 17 to 20. A few people have different preferences. I like to keep mine hovering around 17 for a little over 4 hours. And then that'll about wrap us up. So it's like 4:15 now. We're like 2 hours in, and definitely getting a little overpressure. That's okay. Never had a problem with that too much. Used to. Doesn't seem to be much of a problem anymore, unless like it gets like over 30, then you're gonna have a problem. But and these will stay on the low for the rest of the time. About still need to check them every 15-30 minutes to an hour, you know. Once you get towards the end, you can probably start checking them every hour. Probably 45 minutes I'll check it from now, and maybe an hour after that. And then you know, if you're a little bit newer, you might check twice as frequently. This one actually got a little bit lower, so I just juiced it up real quick. If it drops down for, you know, a couple minutes, that's no big deal. If it drops down for like a half hour, that's a little bit of a different story. Usually you can just come up here, turn the heat up, it'll go back up, and then you can turn it back down. You'll be good to go. So, yeah. At least 2 more hours on these. Alright. 6:45 tonight. And, another one bites the dust. Days are short this time of year. Till tomorrow morning. Good morning. It's a good morning. It's a good morning, huh, Jerry? So we're gonna get in here, unpack these blocks that we made the other day. You should still have a vacuum. Let's see. Nope, that one didn't hold it. This one got it. That one didn't hold it. Sometimes they hold a vacuum and sometimes they don't. 4 days, I suppose. Yeah, it doesn't really matter too much. Try to see if we can get one open. Jesus, tits.
some grains. Woohoo! See, the water got pretty darn high over here. Just about to the top of the bags. Why don't we do this one? 'Cause this one got up to 30 psi, so take a look at it. And I'll usually leave the other half of these alone until next week when I need more. I got grains. Sometimes you want to be careful, like picking them up like that, because the filter will stick to the bottom of the bag and they can rip. Right there, baby. We have grains. Let's go inoculate these. Just a quick little touch on these before I inoculate them. Almost see some are at different consistencies. This one's nice and pretty looking. This one has a little bit of air in it. And then ones like this are just super packed. And when you use just wheat, in my experience, like it doesn't have the holes of the oats, and it can get really smushed. You can almost see that some of the wheat got really smushed. So having a whole grain just kind of helps with that a little bit. And this little bit of extra air generally isn't anything to worry about as long as the bag's still sealed. There's no pinholes or anything like that. Stuff like this is nice though. It looks really pretty. However, they all perform just about the same. I know some people, like spawn producers, seem to, after they're done cooking, they open them up and let air in them just to, I guess they're safe because of antibiotic bacteria or anaerobic bacteria, a bacteria that thrives without the presence of air. But if you seed appropriately, these should stay sterile, just like a petri dish or anything. If you sterilize appropriately, there's no need to reintroduce air. That's just another vector for contamination possibility. So I mean, I'll leave these on the shelf and they're good for probably about a month at max, usually is what I consider them. However, you could probably use them indefinitely as long as they're not dirty. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and inoculate some of these with some liquid culture. About 10 days after inoculation, the bag should look like this. Nice, even, healthy looking white. Compared to that, except for maybe, in my case, the Piopini, which takes about probably 15 days or so to completely colonize. These are probably about 17 days old, and your spawn should generally break up pretty easily. This one's the oldest. almost like a good milkshake. You want it to hold its shape for the most part, but also fall apart super easy. That'll make some good spawn for you. Looking at some of the grain we inoculated last week out of that specific run, they're doing just great. So this is blue oyster, lion's mane. Kind of hard to tell on this guy. And then this is a second generation Piopini I did grain to grain on because I lost I lost a couple bags last week because I didn't have liquid culture ready, essentially. So I grain to grain some, and looking just good. These things break apart really easy. Yeah, baby. Another real quick thing on the grain prep. So every once in a while you might see things like this. Kind of see it's just occurring, those bald spots on the top of the substrate. Kind of hard to see, but you can see those bald spots. So what I'll do in that case, this usually indicates that it was just slightly too dry, and then break them up. Just break those up, let it recolonize, and that'll take care of those type of issues. In some instances, you might see stuff a little more like this. Kind of, you can almost see where they've been pressing up against the sides, and this isn't as big of an issue that I've noticed, I guess, compared to this. I've spawning stuff like this outside of a flow hood, I've noticed potential bacterial issues. Spawning stuff like this outside of a flow hood isn't as problematic. But if you're going to spawn something like this to core, that's going to be kind of an issue. And spawning something like this to core isn't going to be as much of an issue. It's just that if you aren't staying inside a sterile environment, these little grains right here are, if you're spawning this to straw or core, there's potential that the bacteria are going to start to colonize these. So you really want to remix it to colonize those areas. This isn't so much. What you're seeing is just uncolonized spots because of excess water, and that's not as much of a problem. You can remix this and it'll kind of take those away as it redistributes some of that moisture. A couple tips.